Listen, I'm locked in. I'm ready to go. But before I do, just to continue Lil sentiments. Have to find something you love. Have to find something you do. It's a blessing to wake up every day and do what you love. It's a blessing every day to even not love, do what you love because you're alive and you're well. There's a lot of things in this world that um, kind of prohibit people from doing what they want to do. A lot of things that's out of your control. Just got to focus on what you could control, and life is fine. As long as you have the freedom to make that decision to do so, life is fine. And you have to just find those little enjoyments, little victories in order for you to keep going. It's not about the big victory. It's not about the home run play. It's never about the big plays. It's about the small plays that create bigger moments for yourself in your future. So remember that. Remember this. It's always paradise in your mind, and that's where you got to stay sometimes. I'm ready to go. I'm locked in.
And I had a feeling, or I have a feeling, that Mark Cuban told the Mavericks that same exact line that you said. It's not about the home run. Why try to make the play-in tournament? We ain't gonna do nothing anyway. We might as well take baby steps and hey, take a step back so we can take a step forward. Okay, and we might as well talk about that right now as our first opening headliner topic here, because the Mavs made a business choice to tank the play-in tournament. Okay, so I want to react to that, and also to follow up, what's next for the Dallas Mavericks? And Zay, if you want to kick us off first, by all means.
What's next for the Dallas Mavericks is they have to build through the draft. A lot of teams have gone away for decades now, gone away from recruiting and not recruiting, excuse me, building through the draft, building their assets up, and creating a foundation for their teams. A lot of teams try to take away foundations from other teams. They've tried to do this for so long now. Before it was only one or two teams doing it. Now every team is trying to do it, and now it seems like building through the draft is a lost art form. A lot of teams, for instance, I'll use an example like the Bucks. Like no one thought, or even the Nuggets, no one thought that Jokic and Giannis would be the superstars that they are today when they first got drafted. No one anticipated their rise to stardom as it was. But those teams were able to realize that early on and was able to build around Giannis, build around Jokic to create a great foundation for the team for future success. The Dallas Mavericks, once they realized how great of a star Luka was off immediate impact, their thoughts were just, we need to compete now. We need to go after it now. And they traded a lot of pieces that they could have possibly built around Luka Doncic, and or even lack of, because they didn't draft well and didn't bring the right players around him to create a foundation so that more and more players can develop around him and become a powerhouse team in the Western Conference. It's very heavy, Luka Doncic heavy, and it could weigh a toll on him. He's tired. It's not just a physical fatigue; he's mentally fatigued to be carrying a team that's going nowhere. The talent that they have amassed over years with Luka Doncic isn't the issue. They're not below caliber NBA players. These are guys who could score the basketball. These are guys who could put up 20, not consistently, but put 20 when they need it most. But it's not about that. You have to build a foundation around a kid who could build around other kids, who could build around your rookie players that could possibly be the second star or possibly the big defensive player of that team. And I think the Mavericks have been devoid of doing that with Luka Doncic. You keep putting him around role players, journeymen, and that's not a high morale booster for his superstardom, but also for the coaching staff who's in and out. Jason Kidd being there most recently, and then before that they had Rick Carlisle, and who was there before that? Who knows? I think something in this nature is where which team is going to finally buckle down and say, hey, we're not going to be NBA Finals. We're not going to be in the NBA Finals next year or the year after that. So we need to build a foundation. And that's something that the Dallas Mavericks have been reluctant to do so. They believe Luka Doncic is the foundation. And that is not, as I'm getting a little choked up because I'm a little sad for the brother. That is not the key for success. It is not one player is the foundation. So hopefully the Dallas Mavericks know that now, and they know that they need to build some type of weapons around this kid. So rather it's through the draft or they trade for more young players who have more developing to do so they can bring these kids up, because right now just trading for kids or guys to try to make this team an immediate contender is not the answer.
I'm glad you started off your take that way. because it's going to redirect my flow here. You talked about teams building through the draft around the superstar. And I would love to talk about this because I feel like in the NBA, as an observer, right, what I gather is that players have hijacked the franchise. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. When you talk about superstars, right, for example, Kevin Durant, having basically the GM of Brooklyn, he was a GM while he was there. You tell Durant, I want to build around you through the draft, build around you and Kyrie Irving. He's not having that. That's the power you gave him, right? So now he wants to sign his boys. He wants to sign his friends. He wants to make risks and take risks, right? That could backfire in your face. The risk of trading for James Harden. And we all know what happened after that. You ended up with Ben Simmons, who is rotting on your bench while Kevin Durant said, I'm out. I'm not going to be here. I burned this joint up. I am out of here before I blow up with it. So if you're the Mavericks, you gave Luka Doncic personnel input this year. This was like the first year that Luka Doncic had any personnel input. And guess who he wants to bring in? Kyrie Irving. So now you sacrifice your draft picks to cater to Luka Doncic. Okay, and now guess what? They got Kyrie Irving. And by no means am I blaming Kyrie Irving for this mess right here. Right? He just came in the mess. But still, it made a mess even worse. And now you're catering to Luka Doncic again. This is what I'm talking about, right? Dame, I want to be loyal. I want to win a championship, but I don't want to play with young guys. You see him in the press conference. So you're giving these cats, these superstars, literally power to control your franchise, only for them years from now to say, I'm out of here. And now you got to clean up the mess. So I agree in the sense that, yeah, build through the draft. You are the front office. You are supposed to be the ones to make decisions. Now, can a player come up to you and say, I like this player. I feel like this player could fit well in our team with my game. Then obviously you do your due diligence. That's your star. But that doesn't mean you have to bow down to the star. Okay? And the same thing with Trae Young. We talking about, okay, how they build around Trae Young. They traded for DeJounte Murray, sacrificial assets or non-sacrificial assets. It became sacrificial assets to build around Trae Young. And now look where they are in the playing tournament. But as far as answering the question, what's next for the Dallas Mavericks? I think everybody needs to be on the same accord. Communication is number one. Why I say that? Mark Cuban, he pulled the trigger on the Christian Wood deal when Jason Kidd immediately said, he coming off the bench. Mm-hmm. I'm not even going to play him like that. And you sacrifice a first rounder. So clearly, that was a prime example of people not being on the same page. Mark Cuban is doing one thing. Jason Kidd is not even aware that that's going down. That's number one. Then we get a report about Luka Doncic, and somebody don't like my take. They're trying to call me, right? I got this mic. So you get another report that Luka was unaware that it's conflicting reports, right? That Luka was unaware they was going to tank. I'm not sure if he was briefed or not, but I think this organization, whether it's Luka, whether it's Kyrie, whether it's Mark Cuban, Jason Kidd, they all need to be on the same accord. I'm looking at Jason Kidd in his press conference after they take that game. This cat looked like he was like, yo, I had nothing to do with this. Y'all need to be on the same accord, right? That's number one. Number two, y'all need to make sure y'all sign Kyrie Irving. Why? Because you traded assets for him. You can't just let him walk for free. You can't. You got to try to retain him. And if he doesn't come back, which is not out of the ordinary, like I said, hand to the fire, I think he comes back and give this another go. But we never know. Kyrie Irving, we just never know. Let's say he leaves. Then what's next may be the inevitable move that you have to make and embrace early, which is to trade Luka Doncic and go full rebuild. The reason why I bring that up, and I say that, is because Luka Doncic is only going to get frustrated and more frustrated and more frustrated. You're going to continue to build and use assets on guys to pair with him, and he's going to get more frustrated. You're going to lose, and guess what? Now, after all them assets you gave up for him, okay, or to try to not give up for him, but try to build around him, he going to want to request a trade in the future. Now, what do? That's why sometimes it's good to go full rebuild early. I understand it's a dangerous game when trying to talk about when to pull the plug on a team, when to dismantle a team. I can sit here and say do it or not do it. Zay can sit here and say the Blazers should do it way before or not or now or never, whatever. But those are hard questions to ask or to fathom, right? Trust me, it's easy for us to get on the mic and say these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing to, invest in your franchise and say what's right or not. It's like raising a kid. You could tell me how to raise my kid, but at the end of the day, it's my choice. So they're gonna have to figure out what to do. Me personally, you look at Trae Young and everything that's going on with Atlanta right now, they are realizing that Trae Young probably should be traded. Because you talk about Trae Young and Luka, what do they have in common? They are two high volume scorers. They don't make anybody better like that. They don't. Okay, they love the ball in their hands. The usage rate is through the roof. You can't win a championship with that style of play. Whereas one player dribble, dribble, shoot, shoot. Everybody standing there like they taking pictures, standing there until they get the ball and they shoot a three. You can't win that way. Michael Jordan was playing that way when he first came into the league. And what happened? He got bounced. It wasn't until Phil Jackson said, hold up, we need to run an offense. I'm going to adopt this triangle offense right here, and we're going to use that. That's when Michael Jordan won a chip. So if you're going to build around Trae Young and Luka, you're going to have a team that's similar. And we have to see if they can adapt their games to fit that system. Other than that, what's next? Might be a trade, a full rebuild, to be honest. And I'll leave it there.
I think two things, right? I think one thing that Trae Young and Luka Doncic have in common is that I think you hit it on the nail, high volume scoring, but also they're not leaders in the locker room. Tim Hardaway Jr. pointing out to the media that there's no leader in the locker room. Once Jalen Brunson left, Kyrie's not a leader, Luka Doncic is not a leader. That is a crazy statement to hear, especially when your teammates on the court when you're playing with them, and they don't believe there's a leader in the locker room. That's a huge difference in what Giannis is to the Bucks and what Luka Doncic and Trae Young are to their respective teams. I think that's something that needs to be addressed immediately because you have to bring in a leader in the locker room. It don't have to be a star player. The leader in the locker room doesn't have to be the one scoring all the points. It needs to be the voice. It needs to be the guy who gets everyone together, not just the star players, the role players, everyone, the bench players, the assistant coaches on point with everything. There needs to be a single guy in that locker room that has some type of belief system. And maybe there is a guy out there who's on the trade block who may be available for the Mavericks to go after. But I'm not too sure who it is yet. There's a lot of rumors out there. There's going to be a stacked free agency next year. Possibly Draymond Green's on the move, which is going to be interesting. That's something that maybe Dallas needs to put in on a number one list. Draymond Green is a guy, he punches his teammates from time to time, but at the end of the day, he has his teammates back. He's the person in the locker room that's getting guys upbeat, playing hard, doing what they need to do on possession by possession basis. He's not the most talented guy on the offense or in the locker room, but he's the voice. He's the vocal leader of the Golden State Warriors. And if the Golden State Warriors don't want to retain his services, then Dallas may need that kind of voice in the locker room to get the guys going, to get the guys on their toes, playing hard. Got their guys back when they're doing things right. Luka Doncic is a guy who, when everything is going right, greatest person to be around, of course. When things are going horrible, he's what are we doing? Are we tanking? Are we playing well? Like, I didn't sign up for this. We need to play better. Like, he's not really upbeat or uplifting his teammates. So that's something that needs to be addressed in that locker room. The Mavericks, like I said, they are devoid not of talent, but of hustle guys. The guys that do the dirty work, the gritty work on the basketball court. They had Dorian Finney-Smith at one point, traded him. That was their best hustle guy, and they got rid of him. So I know that Mark Cuban or Jason Kidd, whoever decided to facilitate that trade, didn't understand at the time what they had in that locker room when they had Dorian Finney-Smith. And I think when there's a divide between Cuban and Jason Kidd, they're not on the same direction. They're not going on the same path. That's the issue right there, because someone doesn't know what they have in that locker room. So that needs to be communicated aggressively. more and more and more. Like, listen, these are the guys we need to have. We don't have any hustle guys. Like, you can't win a game with Maxi Kleber and Davis Return starting 4 and 5. That's not a winning recipe. They have a lot of offense on that court. We know that, but offense comes and goes. There's times when the shot's not falling. You need the hustle guys. You need the guys that get the second chance opportunities. The guys that are able to get the foul calls. The guys that are able to make the free throws. The guys that are able to get the putback layup. These are the guys you need to have on your court and on your team. And the Mavericks have gone away with that for the last year and change. Not playing their centers, not having centers, doing all these different things to try to reinvent the game, reinvent the wheel when you don't need to. You don't need to constantly try to reinvent the wheel. That doesn't need to happen right now. Right now, you need to build a team that can compete. And one thing that never goes away, out of all the years the NBA has existed, or all the years that basketball has existed, hustle never goes away. Those are the guys you need to look for. Those are the intangibles you need to look for when you're looking at any player you want to draft, any player you want to sign a free agency, trade for. Hustle needs to be a part of their MO. And right now, they don't have any guys that have that in their DNA. And that is why the Mavericks need to look for that next. I don't know if there's a particular player in mind that just inputs that, but they need to move the roster around to get guys who hustle for Luka Doncic. Because if everyone's talking about Luka's not the leader, Luka doesn't play defense, he doesn't do this and that, then you have to do what most GMs have done for their superstars and place those guys around him. Because when you're in an environment that has nothing but positivity and hardworking people around it, 9 times out of 10, that's what you adapt to. When you're have no guys that are just selfish and only want to score and only want to look out for themselves, that's the environment you adapt to. So this is something that the Mavericks need to look inside themselves and say, what is our DNA? What are we trying to convey to this kid so we could develop him into the best player that he could be? So hopefully they learned that after this season and, they fix that immediately.
And yeah, so I had a lengthy lap first go round. Zay, you took the cake in the second lap, but you speak facts there. I would say to really end off my take here in regards to this topic, I do want to address the tanking, right? Because I know a lot of people looked at that and took issue. I understand tanking is a forbidden words, right? Especially in sports. And the NBA is doing their own investigation on that matter. I guess I got a take question here. For me, I always say, right? Listen, I don't like losing. That's just me. In everything in life. I understand you're going to lose some, you're going to win some. I hate losing, right? And how I show how I hate losing is getting better when I lose. That's how I show I hate losing. By getting better to make sure I don't lose in that particular side of the bracket again. And I think when you talk about things that happen for the greater good, I could use a life example to compare to the NBA. There are things that I wanted to accomplish that didn't happen. And I took a step back. And that step back actually propelled me forward. And I think when you talk about tanking, me personally, and we talked about this very, very specific topic about whether the Dallas Mavericks should tank or not. I said they should tank. And the reason why is because I knew that they realistically was not going anywhere. They were going to be in the play-in tournament. Who knows, by the way, how they was playing defense if they would have got out. I don't even think that's a given. But let's say they got out. Realistically, how far are they going? And how does that accomplish anything? I don't really see it. Maybe more chemistry with Luka and Kyrie, you could say, potentially. But that's something that could be developed next year if Kyrie Irving decides he returns. I think for me, sometimes when you think about the greater good, this was for the greater good, right? Especially the direction that they want to go. Whether it's keeping Luka and building around Luka, using that pick, you could say, well, who are they going to draft to place around Luka that can play defense? You could say that, fine. They don't even have to draft anybody. They could use that pick, that top 10 pick, to trade in a package to get a perimeter defender. So there's a lot of ways that you can go with a pick like that. I think that Mark Cuban buzzed down, literally, and told them, listen, we are going to tank this game. Because realistically, it's not about today anymore. We had our chance. We had 82 games to think about today, and we failed. Think about it. This is not the NFL where it's like 17 games, all right? No, you had 82 games to show me a heartbeat. Legitimately, 82 games to show me a heartbeat. You know how much things can happen in 82 games? Look at Boston last year, 25-25 at one point, right? They sucked at one point. And guess what? The season was so long, they turned it around and almost won the daggone finals. So you had that amount of time to show me a heartbeat, and you didn't. So guess what? I'm going to buzz down and make an executive decision to tank. Now, as far as the communication that I briefly touched on in my first lap, I hope that got through to everybody and everybody was brief before they made that decision and activated that decision. So I'm going to leave that there. And Zay, I guess the question on the back end, because I remember I said it was a take question, you know, is this a bad look for the NBA, for the Mavericks, that they're tanking on the playing era where more teams can make the dance and yet that can't even help you out? You have to tank. How does that look from your view?
Well, from my personal view, it looks terrible. From not only the NBA aspect, but from the Mavericks aspect. There was a lot of reports prior to them deciding to tank, with Cuban talking about Jalen Brunson and his dad about it's difficult when the parents get involved. They're talking about how the Knicks basically conspired to get him early, a lot of things in that nature. And it looks really bad that they decided to tank. And I think it'll be a very interesting situation if the NBA decides to remove protections from all picks moving forward. So now it's no longer, a future pick with his top 10 protected or whatever. It's just you trade your future pick. That's it. There is no protection to it. And there's a possibility that this can be the domino that sets that off moving forward. It's not going to be an executive decision, of course, because everything is voted upon. Everything's a vote. But there's going to be a domino effect where that's a situation like that could possibly happen, where more teams will be accepting of removing protections from picks when things in this nature happens. When there's a team who's a possible that could really make a play-in potential or could be in a play-in position, but they decide even when they have a chance to win games to get there, they're like, nah, I'm not going to win those games. I'll just tank it out and not make the playoffs. So like that's where it's like, all right, it's one thing if you're trying to tank for the number one pick, but now you're trying to tank to keep your pick. That's a dicey game, and that's what makes teams probably like, I don't want to have those situations happen to me if I'm banking on a team to win the playoffs and then we get their draft pick this year and they decide that they don't want to go after it because of whatever reasons they have, and they say, nah, we're just gonna lose out the rest of the season, get a 10th pick, call it a day. That's a scary thing to look at. So I can see a situation where a dramatic decision is made, not because it's fair, but because to be made an example out of. Like, you decided to find a loophole in the game. Now we're going to penalize you and make sure that no one else does it again. Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.